Shakespeare or the poet, it is one of the essays taken from the book The Representative Men written by Ralph Waldo Emerson. Actually, this is one speech or lecture given by this Ralph Waldo Emerson, and in this he has expressed his views about Shakespeare and his writings. Actually, that personal life or his death or birth is not discussed by Emerson in this essay, but Emerson has tried to focus on his writings, his creativity, his greatness, and all his capacities. Shakespeare has been a point of discussion for writers, critical personalities, and common men. His life story was not known in the beginning, and later on, researchers or writers or critical people collected information about him, and out of that, now we have biography of Shakespeare. But Ralph Waldo Emerson discussed Shakespeare as the poet. What type of characteristics he could find in Shakespeare that he proved out of it that Shakespeare is one of the great poets. Emerson is an American writer actually. Emerson in his speech or lecture discusses about Shakespeare's greatness, and he also criticizes and condemns him. So when you read line by line this essay, you find that Emerson presented or expressed his views about that creativity, about that outstanding capacity of Shakespeare. Actually, we know that Shakespeare has written so many dramas, sonnets, plays. He practiced variety of dramas like tragedy, comedy, melodrama. And while writing his dramas, he has taken themes from history, Bible, mystery, miracle plays, folk tales, fairy tales, and so many other things from society, contemporary society. As we know that Shakespeare belongs to Elizabethan era, which is supposed to be the golden period of literature. So you can find a variety of themes in his dramas. And due to this, Shakespeare has been criticized by critical men that he is not original. And for the purpose, here see Emerson tries to write about Shakespeare and his originality. He says that Shakespeare is great as well as original, because great men are not original, but they have some good qualities, they have some outstanding qualities, they have some distinguished qualities, and they have some knowledge which is different from others. They have variety of knowledge. Great men are more important than others, and that's why we can call Shakespeare as great man. And it is of course more required things to be great than original. What is the definition of original or originality? In simple words, originality means unlikeliness, that which is not similar to other things, that is original, we say. And in that way, we find that great men are not original if you try to apply this meaning to the that concept of originality. But just being unlike is not original according to Emerson. There are so many things which are required to be original. What are these things? You should have variety of knowledge. You should have that capacity to make you more valuable for the society. That is originality, special. So here you should say Shakespeare as original person in that way. Though he has copied so many themes from others, but he has added so many new things to that, and he has created the best thing out of that. So you can call Shakespeare as the greatest genius because he is the most indebted man. He is the man, indebted means who has copied, who has taken some debt. Debt means what? Not that money, but that theme or that subject to write. And in this way, Shakespeare is the genius, the greatest genius, according to Emerson. So, originality and greatness. If you say Shakespeare is not original, you can read this thing and you can understand how Emerson tried to prove that Shakespeare is that greatest genius and the original writer of English language. So, in simple, that language you can express that meaning here. Actually, when you read the original essay of Emerson, you can find that complexity of expression or his expertise being the great orator. You can find that Emerson is not so easy, he has twisted the language easy to understand because he has twisted the language, and while getting the meaning out of the original essay, it's somewhat you need to exert on vocabulary, and so many words are there which are actually showing that deep knowledge of Emerson, how he is great author, and who experiments on his wealth or treasure of vocabulary he has. So here we can see that in the beginning itself, Emerson tried to prove the greatness of Shakespeare. Then, when you read further, we can see that Emerson also discussed about who is the poet and what the poet does. Why he has discussed this particular point in the beginning? Because he wanted to prove that Shakespeare is original, Shakespeare is great and genius, Shakespeare is that having all characteristics or qualities of a poet. So, first of all, Emerson here describes the qualities of a poet. He says that a poet is not foolish or talkative person. Poet writes something good, and that he observes and feels for the society and country. What is there in poem? In poem we have feelings of writer, observations, experiences, thoughts, likings, all that we have of that writer in his writing. So poet means just not a person who writes poetry in this context. Poet means writer, poet means author. So thus there is nothing whimsical or imaginary in poet's production. So when you say that poet writes with his own imagination or whims, no. Poet tries to point out the realities in society and he writes about that. Poet means author, any author. Author writes with sweet and honest way and considers the convictions, and he points out with the most determined aim which any man or class knows of in his times. So this is how that in the beginning itself Emerson tries to explain his idea or definition about a poet. So this is all about what Emerson thinks that poet is or what he does. So after knowing that what is originality and greatness, then who is poet and what he does. So what do great people do? This is again the point of discussion you can find in the beginning of this essay, that Emerson says that the genius of our life is jealous of individuals and will not have any individual great except through the general. Means all great people are not uncommon one, but these are common, but they are having variety of knowledge, they are important for the society, so they are great. So great man finds himself in the river of thoughts and events, forced onwards by his ideas, necessities of his contemporaries, and he writes about all things in his surroundings. So what is the definition of great man according to Emerson? The person who collects that thoughts and events from that surrounding and writes on that according to the necessities of contemporary people. So he stands where all the eyes of men look one way. So he is the person who is lonely and creating something necessary for the society. And here see, all people are away from him, and he is the only person who stands at one place and writes about the people. So in this way, great people, they considers the necessity of society, they write for society and contemporary that requirements. So in this way, we can see three important things are there which are presented by the author in the beginning, and it's very important to have this introduction to know about originality and greatness of that Shakespeare, and later on that definition of poet. Poet means a person who observes, feels for the society, who creates for his contemporary society, and a person who has that means actually the capacity to fulfill the aim of the society. Then the person is a great person, poet is a great person because he is the person who is always attracted towards the thoughts and events in the society and writes for that. So Shakespeare does the same. In his contemporary society, he found so many issues, so many problems, so many important events, so many experiences which were significant one, and he adopted all these things, and he wrote dramas on that. In this essay later on, we'll find how Emerson easily proved the fact. Means he gave numerous number of examples of dramas written by Shakespeare, so that we'll be convinced and will accept the fact that Shakespeare is the great fellow, is the great poet. It's very important. So let's stop here. We'll continue in the next lecture.